right, so today we're going to try to unpack a story about some unbelievable talent, but also some deeply disturbing allegations.
Yeah.
We're talking about R. Kelly, the self-proclaimed king of R&B.
Of course.
Sold over 75 million records worldwide.
Sure.
But alongside that success, there's just this dark cloud of accusations that we can't ignore.
It's a case where charisma and controversy really collide in the most unsettling way.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, how do you reconcile this undeniable musical genius with the weight of these charges?
Yeah, how do we even begin to...
That's what we're going to unpack today.
Yeah, is he a true visionary or is he a master manipulator?
Right. Grifter or gifted?
Right. Was he driven by passion for music or was it just a facade for something much darker?
We'll see.
You sent over a ton of material.
Yeah.
His Wikipedia page,
Yeah.
articles detailing his legal battles, the surviving R. Kelly docuseries,
Mm-hmm.
even a piece about how he's still earning money from streaming platforms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So we're going to sift through all of this to try and answer that question. Grifter or gifted?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating question, and I think there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, to understand this complex figure, we kind of have to go back to his beginnings.
Right.
R. Kelly was born in 1967 on the south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
His childhood, as he's described it, was incredibly tough,
Right.
marked by both trauma and abuse.
It sounds like a very difficult environment to grow up in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's within that difficult environment that music became his escape,
Oh, interesting.
his refuge. He started performing in the Chicago subway system,
Wow.
which ultimately led him to his first record deal in 1990.
Okay, so this is kind of like the classic struggling artist story in a way.
Yeah, I mean, right out of the,
Yep.
stereotypical playbook.
Yeah, paying his dues and, making it from nothing.
His debut album, Born into the 90s, dropped in 1991
Right.
and launched him straight into stardom hits like Bump and Grind.
Oh, yeah. Your body's calling.
Those are classic. Solidified his place as a hit maker.
Hmm.
Somebody who knows how to craft a catchy tune.
Yeah, a lot of people consider him like a true musical genius.
Absolutely.
And not only was he a performer,
Right.
he was also a very sought-after producer.
Right.
He worked with some of the biggest names in the industry.
Yeah, like Aaliyah, Janet Jackson,
Yeah.
even Michael Jackson,
I
the
mean,
king of pop himself.
you can't get much bigger than that.
No, you can't. It really cemented his place in the upper echelon of the music industry.
For sure, but then there's this Aaliyah controversy.
Yeah.
This is 1994 news breaks that Kelly secretly married Aaliyah, who was only 15 years old at the time.
Right.
The marriage was later annulled, but, it cast a long and unsettling shadow over his career.
It did, and it was really just the beginning of a long and troubling series of accusations and legal troubles that would follow him for decades.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this is where the darker side of his story really starts to emerge.
Right. The first lawsuit accusing Kelly of sexual misconduct with underage girls was filed in December 1996.
So this is just a couple years after the Aaliyah incident.
Right.
And it seems like from that point on, the accusations just kept coming.
They did. Throughout the 2000s, he faced a barrage of accusations and lawsuits
Wow.
that really painted this disturbing picture of potential abuse.
So you have these serious allegations stacking up, but at the same time, his career is still thriving.
Right.
He's still making hits.
Yeah, he's still collaborating.
It's a strange juxtaposition, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the most infamous incident came in 2002 when a videotape allegedly showing Kelly engaging in sexual acts with an underage girl surfaced.
I remember when that happened, it was everywhere.
It was huge.
It's impossible to ignore.
It went to trial in 2008.
Right.
And despite the graphic nature of the evidence, Kelly was acquitted of all child pornography charges.
Wow. So even with that videotape,
Right.
the jury didn't find him guilty.
Right.
That's hard to believe.
It is. But the allegations didn't stop there. And then in 2019, the Lifetime docuseries Surviving R. Kelly aired. And it brought a whole new wave of scrutiny this time, amplified by the voices of multiple women accusing Kelly of abuse.
Yeah, that docuseries was a major turning point.
Absolutely.
I mean, it featured these really harrowing accounts from women who alleged they were abused and manipulated by Kelly.
It was impossible to ignore, and it really ignited this cultural reckoning
It did.
and prompted these widespread calls for accountability.
Yeah, I mean, it led to a surge in calls to the National Sexual Assault Hotline.
Right.
And the hashtag Neuter Kelly movement gained so much momentum.
Yeah, and that public pressure, coupled with the weight of these allegations, ultimately led to Kelly's convictions.
Okay, finally.
In 2021, a federal court in New York found him guilty on 9 counts,
Wow.
including racketeering and violations of the Mann Act, which prohibits the transportation of individuals across state lines for illegal sexual activity.
That's it. So they finally got him.
They did, and he was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
30 years, that's a significant sentence.
It is then, in June 2022, he received an additional 20 years for a federal child pornography case in Chicago.
So he's essentially looking at spending the rest of his life behind bars.
Yeah, 50 years combined, that's a long time.
But even behind bars serving a 50-year sentence, the controversy surrounding R. Kelly continues.
Right.
I mean, his music is still widely available on streaming services, generating significant royalties.
It really begs the question, how do we as consumers navigate the enjoyment of an artist's work when we know about the horrific acts they've committed?
Yeah, that's a really tough question.
Where do we draw the line between appreciating the art and supporting someone who's caused immense harm?
It's a question that resonates far beyond R. Kelly. We've seen it with countless figures throughout history,
Yeah.
artists, actors, politicians.
Right.
How do we reconcile their talents and contributions with their, deeply problematic or even criminal actions?
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
It really is.
And just when you thought the story couldn't get any more complicated, Kelly's own daughter, Buku Abi, came forward in October 2024
Oh, wow.
with new sexual abuse allegations against him.
This was detailed in that new documentary.
Yeah, R. Kelly, Karma, A Daughter's Journey.
Right.
Abi alleges that Kelly sexually abused her when she was a child,
That's awful.
recalling a specific incident from when she was around 8 or 9 years old.
It adds another layer of tragedy to this already deeply troubling story.
Absolutely. And these allegations, while vehemently denied by Kelly, just add another layer of complexity to this already deeply troubling story.
Yeah, and it forces us to confront this uncomfortable reality that power and fame can often act as shields, protecting abusers and silencing victims.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. And it makes that initial question we posed, grifter or gifted, feel almost too simplistic.
Right,
Because on the one hand, there's no denying R. Kelly's musical talent and influence.
right. He was incredibly gifted musically. Yeah, I mean, you hear his influence in so many artists who came after him.
Yeah, just music was everywhere. I Believe I Can Fly, Ignition, Remix, Bump and Grind.
Oh, yeah, massive hits.
They dominated the chart.
Cultural touchstones for sure.
Became these cultural touchstones. He blended R&B, hip-hop, soul, even gospel influences
Yeah.
in a way that felt fresh and innovative.
Really pushed the boundaries of the genre.
Right. And let's not forget his work as a producer
Right.
for other artists.
Huge impact.
Think about the impact he had on shaping the sounds of Aaliyah Janet Jackson,
Yeah.
Michael Jackson.
Right.
We're talking about some of the biggest names in music history.
Yeah, his fingerprints are all over the landscape of popular music.
So how do we reconcile that legacy, that undeniable impact on music, with the horrific nature of his crimes?
Right.
It feels impossible to separate the artist from the art in this case.
I mean, it's a question that has haunted us for centuries, hasn't it?
Yeah.
How do we engage with the work of individuals who have done terrible things?
Right.
Do we simply erase them from history? Or is there a way to acknowledge both the beauty they created and the harm they inflicted?
It's like we're forced to hold these two opposing ideas in our minds at the same time.
Right.
The undeniable talent and the undeniable harm caused.
The brilliance and the darkness.
Yeah, it's a mental and emotional tug of war.
Exactly. And it challenges us to think critically about our own consumption of art and entertainment.
Mhm.
Can we truly separate the art from the artist enjoying a song without condoning the actions of the person who created it?
Right.
Or does the knowledge of their transgressions taint the experience, making it impossible to enjoy?
It's a debate that's playing out in real time with Kelly's music. Despite his convictions and imprisonment, his songs continue to be streamed, purchased, played on the radio.
Yeah, there's even data that shows Kelly's music streams jumped significantly in the week following the airing of Surviving R. Kelly.
Oh, wow.
It seems the controversy actually fueled interest in his music, which is a pretty disturbing thought.
Yeah. So on the one hand, you have people who argue that we can appreciate art without condoning the actions of the artist. They might say, I love this song, but I condemn what this person did.
Yeah, I can understand that perspective.
Right. And then you have others who feel strongly that listening to his music is directly supporting him,
Right.
both financially and symbolically. They believe we should boycott his work entirely, sending a message that we will not tolerate this kind of behavior.
And that's a valid point, too. It's a really complex issue.
And it gets even more complicated when you consider that a portion of the royalties from Kelly's music is now being used to pay restitution to his victims.
That's right. In 2022, Kelly was ordered to pay over $506,000 in restitution and fines to his victims from the royalties he was still earning.
So in a way, his victims are benefiting from his continued musical success, even if indirectly.
Yeah.
But does that make it okay to listen to his music?
I don't know.
It's a morally ambiguous situation
It really is. There's no easy answers.
with no easy answers.
But we can't ignore the fact that there's a powerful financial incentive for streaming platforms, record labels, radio stations to keep Kelly's music available as long as there's demand. They will continue to profit.
It feels like this whole situation forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the systems that allowed this to happen for so long.
Absolutely. R. Kelly's story is a stark reminder that talent and fame can be used to mask abuse and manipulate others.
Right.
It exposes the cracks in our society, the ways in which power can be used to silence victims and protect abusers.
And it begs the question, what can we do to prevent this from happening again?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
We spent a lot of time unpacking the darkness of this story, but I think it's important to circle back to that initial question. Grifter or gifted?
Right.
Is it possible that R. Kelly was both?
I think that's a really good question.
Can someone be a musical visionary and a manipulative abuser?
I mean, I think it's clear that he was incredibly gifted musically.
Right.
He had an undeniable talent for creating catchy melodies and crafting songs that resonated with millions of people.
But at the same time, there's overwhelming evidence that he used that talent, that charisma, to lure and manipulate young women, often underage, for his own gratification.
It's a difficult truth to confront.
It is. So maybe the answer isn't about labeling him as one or the other,
Right.
but rather acknowledging the complexity of his character and the ways in which his brilliance and his darkness were intertwined.
I think that's a crucial insight. Human beings are complex creatures capable of great good and terrible evil.
Yeah.
And often those opposing forces exist within the same individual.
Right.
It's uncomfortable to think about, but it's the reality we have to grapple with.
And R. Kelly's story is far from over. He's appealing his sex abuse convictions, and there are still ongoing legal battles surrounding his case.
Right.
But beyond the legal system, there's a cultural reckoning that needs to happen.
Exactly. We need to have honest conversations about how we address abuse, how we support survivors, and how we hold powerful figures accountable for their actions. R. Kelly's story is not just about one man. It's about the systems that enabled his behavior and the culture that allowed him to thrive for so long.
It's about taking a hard look in the mirror and asking ourselves some tough questions.
For sure.
How do we contribute to a culture that turns a blind eye to abuse?
Yeah.
What can we do to create a world where survivors are believed and supported, and where abusers are held accountable for their actions?
Those are questions we all need to be asking ourselves. Yeah, it's about being honest about the role we all play in perpetuating these systems of power and silence.
Right.
Because for years, the whispers about R. Kelly were there,
They were there.
but they were often ignored or dismissed.
Yeah, it's like there was a collective reluctance to confront the possibility that this beloved figure, this musical icon,
Right.
could be capable of such darkness.
And
those who did speak out were often met with disbelief
yeah,
or even hostility.
that's a crucial point. We need to create a culture where survivors feel safe
Right.
and empowered to come forward, knowing they will be believed and supported,
Yes.
not silenced or shamed.
And it's not just about believing survivors.
Right.
It's about holding those in positions of power accountable for their actions.
Yeah, I mean, for too long, R. Kelly was protected by a network of enablers who prioritized his career and reputation
Right.
over the well-being of his victim.
Yeah, that network included managers, lawyers, publicists, even music industry executives who turned a blind eye to the allegations or actively worked to suppress them.
It's a stark reminder that power often protects power,
Yes.
and that silence can be complicit in perpetuating abuse.
It's also important to acknowledge the role that race may have played in how R. Kelly's case was perceived and handled.
Oh, absolutely.
We can't ignore the historical context of how Black men have been stereotyped and unfairly targeted by the justice system.
Yeah, the conversation around R. Kelly's case intersects with these broader discussions about race, power, and privilege in America. It forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about systemic biases and the ways in which they can influence our perceptions and actions.
So as we try to unpack this incredibly complex story, I keep coming back to the question, what can we learn from this? How do we prevent this from happening again?
I think one of the most important takeaways is the need for greater transparency and accountability within the music industry and beyond.
Yeah.
We need to break down the structures that allow powerful figures to operate with impunity,
Right.
shielding them from consequences.
That means having clear codes of conduct, robust reporting mechanisms, and independent investigations when allegations arise.
Yeah, and it also means fostering a culture of respect and safety,
Right.
where everyone feels valued and empowered to speak up.
It's not just about policies and procedures. It's about shifting the culture,
Right.
challenging the norms that allow abuse to flourish.
It's about creating a world where everyone, regardless of their status or power, is held accountable for their actions.
And it's a conversation that needs to continue.
Yep.
R. Kelly's story, while shocking and disturbing, is not unique.
It's not.
It's a reflection of a larger societal problem that extends far beyond the music industry.
We need to keep talking about these issues, raising awareness and demanding change, because ultimately it's about creating a safer and more just world for everyone.
So as we conclude this deep dive into the complex and troubling story of R. Kelly, I want to leave you with this.
Yeah.
What resonated with you most? What questions are you still wrestling with? Because this is not just about one man. It's about all of us.
It really is.
It's about examining our own values, our own complicity, and figuring out how we can contribute to a world where abuse is no longer tolerated.
It's about using this story as a catalyst for change, for demanding better from ourselves and from the institutions that shape our society. It's a call to action for all of us.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the life and career of R. Kelly.
Yeah, it was a really thought-provoking discussion.
It was. If you found this episode compelling, be sure to check out our other episodes, where we explore the lives of other controversial figures and try to answer that age-old question, grifter or gifted?